Hello.
Hello, I think that is us live. Hello, hello. Hello, and welcome to the Beyond Screens Alternative Controller Show. My name is Alistair, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Tatiana.
Hello. In that show, we invite creators of alt-control video games to tell us about their work and show us what they're working on.
For those of you who may be new to the world of alt control, these are video games made using unusual custom-made controllers. For example, a game might be made with a door stopper, or perhaps an electric guitar, or maybe even a paper shredder. Or a creator might create a completely new contraption using electronics that they solder together themselves.
And today's guest is Rémy Sohier. Rémy is a digital artist and academic researcher from Paris. He creates art games, including alternative controller games and playful performances, which explore what it means to have an emotional relationship to the game, autobiographical game, many stuff we're going to talk about, so I'm not going to spoil right now. And before we welcome Rémy to the stream, let's take a look at one of his projects to give you a feel of his work. This is his last playful installation / performance, Game Jockey. Hi. Hello, Rémy. How are you?
Hello, everyone. I'm fine. And you?
Well,
Doing
great.
well, thanks.
So much
Great.
for joining us.
Yeah, it's a very good pleasure. Very honored to be here.
It's an
Well,
absolute pleasure to have you here.
yeah, it's our pleasure. Thank you so much. Before we move on, so we briefed you a bit about the show, but before we move on to your story, your life, can you tell us a bit about Game Jockey in a few sentences?
Yeah. How it's about live performance in video games. It's like changing the rules of the game in live, or the goal is to mixing games, but actually I don't really do this, and it's part of a project, an academic project in my university. And I'm not the creator of the Game Jockey. I think Coded really was the first one who introduced the Game Jockey notion. So I wanted to be clear about this.
Yeah, we can talk later about Toast Coded, maybe Little Nando too, all these people that are making people play on stage, basically. We
Yes,
can call it that
it's
way.
this.
Yeah.
Yes.
So as I understood, your very first background, your licence, a bachelor, French bachelor, is in arts. You used to, well, and you still study and research digital art. Am I correct?
Yes, yes. I'm an assistant professor at Paris 8 University, and I wrote a thesis that I passed my Viva in 2016 about artistic sensitivity in video game creation, something like this. It's improvisation.
What do you mean by artistic sensitivity?
Well, it's when you're an artist, you have your subjectivity, you have everything that is inside yourself, and it's very clear when you are a photographer or a painter. And my main question was about when I create a game, is it just about logic? Is it just something rational, or is it something that can be done with my sensations, with something very about my intimacy, something inside me.
Yeah.
So all my thesis was about creating a lot of video games that could question this.
Right. That's a fascinating subject matter, and I think it is it's a very potent question to ask.
Yeah, and I can't reply it.
We can talk about autobiographic games, biographical games, but to start, I'd love to talk about your very early games, what you did when, as you said, you were teens, I guess. You started with RPG Maker.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah,
How
yes.
old were you when you started making your first video games?
Oh, maybe 15 or 16.
Okay.
But at first, I started creating game stories with music compositions.
Okay.
I composed a lot of songs to help me visualize my worlds, and later at 15, I began. I discovered RPG Maker like a lot of teenagers like me, and I joined a lot of communities and also experimental games communities like the Cube Collective, and we did a lot of experimentation on the boundaries, the limits of definition of a game. What's a game? What's the definition of a game? Why an RPG should have a turn in the fights? Well, all this stuff. It was very interesting.
When we did researches, when we did researches on you, what was really interesting is that the first games that we saw from you were very experimental. Many people will do very classic games and then turn experimental. You did quite the opposite, at least when we did the researches on you. That's what appeared. Like one of your first game, which is just very simply called MP3 game, is a game that has the format of an MP3, and it gave me like so much experimental vibe. I mean, it's quite uncommon. Do you think it's because you come from digital art, maybe? So you came from the weird side of the force?
Yeah, the weird side of the force. Yeah, maybe. MP3 game is like an insult, a middle finger to the players. And the goal of this game was just to be insulted by everyone. So
did it work?
It worked. It was a
congrats.
Success. Yeah, but earlier than this game, I did a game called Le Perdu. And it's just a title screen and a game over screen, and I submitted to a contest, a very popular contest in the RPG Maker French community, and I was also insulted. It was a very great pleasure.
Okay, you're feeding on hate. Okay.
Yeah, this is why it's a teenage games, because I just expressed my rebellion on the world, and but it was interesting. I wanted to create something to change, because I saw everyone doing the same thing and repeat the same game mechanics, and I was bored, like a lot of other people. I wasn't the only one who thought this. So I wanted to create something that can be different from a huge text in a very 90s forum, with very old things.
Yeah, and you didn't do only troll games. I mean, you had also just experiment. Like you mentioned this collective called Le Cube, because it's French, I guess. And it's really old school. Like their website is still up, actually.
Yes.
But really, like it has this web 1.0 vibe, like PHP vibe. You did some sort of digital exquisite cadaver with them and other experiments that are very artsy.
Yes. It's Cube Sandwich. Yes, the Cube Collective was. I know that there were a lot of Canadian people, and I think Belgium or yes. So it was quite international, but really Frenchy in vibe. And yeah, Cube Sandwich was exquisite cadaver, something like this.
Yeah, exquisite cadaver. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the word. And yeah, we wanted to create a game with a first part, and everyone will do a different part of the game with its own style. But the style notion in the 20s vibe was quite new, so it was really interesting. And I used photographies to create game assets and to create something like disturbing games. Disturbing things like the other games you we described it earlier.
And all this was between 2006 and 2009, basically, from what I understood. And
yes.
During the same time, you did a playful installation. So it wasn't yet the kind of installation you do nowadays, but you had one that it's called Yelling Scarecrow.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about it, the context you made this? Because it was, I mean, in 2006, 2009, altctrl wasn't really a movement, etc. So that's interesting.
I think it's my first alternative controller, but I didn't call it like this. I was in visual arts bachelor in Bordeaux in France, and most of the time I did stuff with painting or very traditional stuffs. But some teachers told me that I know how to program stuff and making things with games, and I should definitely use it in my art pieces. So I tried to put a joystick inside a wood, and it will. There is no game world. It will create a scarecrow with an old dress, and the way the joystick bend in one direction or another will make it cries or he will
Scream.
do sounds like oh no
Yell,
no, please stop.
The impersonation is perfect. Okay.
Yeah, I remember very well how I did it, and the game was to trap spectators or players with this and feeling guilty because as it's a joystick on a wood, it fall down. So everyone was holding the scarecrow and he fall down and he was screaming, and everyone puts it straight,
upright.
Yeah, upright.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because they didn't want to feel the guilty of make it hurt. So well, it was another teenage game, I think.
But I guess, I mean, yeah, I mean, see, I see in that there's this kind of performance aspect in that as well. I mean, if you imagine being the person hugging the scarecrow and then letting the scarecrow down, the scream coming out, and presumably everybody else in the room is going to turn and look at you.
Yeah.
And is that something like, how did people respond to that?
They laugh a lot. I had a video of this event, but I don't know where it is. But I remember that everyone laughed a lot because it's auto-derision. No? Yes. When you play it, you laugh about yourself. You know that it's a trap. You know it's a game, so you know it's fake. And there is this fantastic thing about games that you can do very stupid things and like it and be very fond of it.
Yeah.
And after your bachelor, you made a master in digital arts. From the dates, what I got is that you started using Python as a programming language. Maybe it gave you some more possibilities regarding programming games, I assume. And you made more and more experimental stuff. Still some troll games, like the fastest RPG ever. and stuff like this. If people are curious, they can look at your website, which is yourname.com. So it's easy. But also started some more academic work. And right after it, in 2012, you started your PhD on this.
Yeah.
How did you, came from experimental, almost trollish games and turned them into academic work?
It's simple. I couldn't earn money with it. So I had to change. when I finished my visual arts bachelor, I really liked it. I had a history of art courses or philosophy. I practiced some drawing. I have a lot of memories of it. It was very great. But once I had my bachelor, I was okay. What will I do now? So I continued my studied. I studied in Paris in a department called Arts and Technology of Images, where it's my job today. I'm a teacher in it now. And they teach me how to create 3D models or programming with Python, yes. Also with C#, C++, things like this. It is a very interesting department because there is a philosophy where the artistic part of art creation is important, but also the programming part is half important. So we have students who came from visual arts bachelors like me, and other from very programming bachelors, and they put all the students together. They do stuff in teams, and it's like this for 35 years. It's one of the
courage starts with a risk. Defy boundaries and anything.
Wow. And it's a public one. So
and it's a public one. Yes, it's a public one. And so it was very interesting. And at the end, I wanted to continue. In fact, to be very honest, at the very beginning, I was a very bad student and at school. When I came to the faculty, it was very interesting for me because they just trust me and they let me do what I want, and I get responsible of what I did, and I liked this so much that I just said, okay, let's keep going and do a PhD. So I began, yes, my PhD in 2012. So for 4 years. And I created alternative controllers with a collective called Alistair.
So yeah, you started an art game collective doing altctrl, but not only, also art games in general, I'd say.
Yeah.
That's called Alistair. How did this collective, because there are not a lot of altctrl games collective, even in the world. So how did you start this one? What happened?
Everything started with a game. I created a game for the Return of Future contest that you know also, Tatiana, because it's the first time we met together.
Exactly.
And I submitted a game called Every Day I'm Working. For the theme was go work, something like this, or at work. I'm not sure. And
something about work. Yeah, I remember that. We have a video of this. It's the first game I played from you, actually.
Great. I think it's one of I'm the most proud. It's very simple, and it's when you see every experimental stuff I did before, it's very logical. I did this. It's about the boundaries, the limits of a game, but it's also about something with gesture. You have 6 characters and 6 different stories, and each story is told with a gesture. very simple gesture, and it gets worse and worse in the storytelling, and it tests your limits to do something very ugly. And there is also a music that is progressive, and it's quite particular, but it's very simple. It's 1 minute experience. It's very short but very synthetic, I think.
It's a very elegant design, if you don't mind, because we have the video right now. So we have 6 vignettes, and inside each kind of thumbnail, there is an action that is required that the game requires the player to do. And the player has a controller that is really simple. You only have the inputs that are necessary for the game. So yes, it's an alt control, but the approach for this alt control is simplicity. Just what you need, no gamepads or whatever, so you don't have noise, only signal. And in each thumbnail, there is an action that is required from you, and you need to do them, and it will add layers of action. And the sound is also connected to this, because you will have layers of sound that is connected to that. And I remembering, but I remember back then when I was playing, telling myself, oh, that's quite elegant and a really simple and on point take on the topic. And I found it actually very elegant. And
Thank you.
I did understand how you ended up doing this. First, because of the theme of compliance from the player, coming from troll games. And that's where it's interesting, because you present your own work in a really humble way, like it's trollish in a sense, but truly behind it, there is this theme of compliance, of obedience, etc. So you can put it you can put it with humility, but you can present it with a lot of depth also, actually. And I think every day I'm working is quite the elegant side of this troll aspect of your games.
Thank you. I didn't hear any feedback like this for this game, so thank you.
And here you go. That was free. And yeah, so we were talking about your PhD, how you started, how Every Day I'm Working was one of the first game you made. You presented it in this exhibition that's called Retro No Future. We exhibited there. It was also one of my first exhibit, actually, the third one, I'd say. At least my first year of exhibition, for sure. And yeah, so you started your PhD, and as part of your PhD, you did quite a lot of games that were alt control or alt control-ish, at least in the playful installation vibe. And one of the earliest, I'd say, is so in English it's Duck Kitty or Duck Kitty. In French it's Coin Coin contre Minou. I assume it's how did you end up doing this game?
From Every Day I'm Working to Dear Kitty, there is just a very important event in my life as an artist. Is that I met Henri Morawski, who managed the Retro No Future. And after the exhibition, we became friends. And also because we lived in the same city, which was Pontoise, near Paris. Well, it's like Paris, but it's not Paris. And Henri was very important for me, because he trusted me in my artistic creations. And I had a lot of friends in my school, and I wanted to create a collective about just game creation. It's just a group of friends who love games and want to create some. And we started at first create the game called Super, and the second one was Ducati. Okay. So if you want, I can talk about Ducati, but I think it will be
no chronological order is fine. Go.
Okay, but both of them was created very close to each other. And okay, I have a story to tell you. Yes, Ducati was prototyped in a global game jam, and I also had a little teenage spirit in mind. So I had the new Makey controller, which is a little card that you can connect things, and when two things are connected, you can do anything, like use it to create a sound or use it to create alternative controller. It's very, very powerful for alternative controller. And it was completely new, so I wanted to experiment it in the Global Game Jam. The first thing that came in my mind was to get insulted by everyone. So I just downloaded a deck sound, and every time I used my Makey, there was the sound every time. So everyone.
That's a very good duck noise, by the way.
Yeah, I heard it 1,000 times. So.
Okay. Oh, amazing.
So I created a game like this. Oh, it's very interesting to hear the sound, and but I need another sound, which it will be the sound for Katie. And what would be great with Kitty and Ducks? Well, it could be two teams that fight each other to find something. A candy, okay, it's a candy, and this is how Ducati came from. And the main interactive part of this game is about touching your partner. It's just a reflex game. When you have a screen where there is nothing in it, and a candy can show up from anywhere. Once you see it, you have to touch the skin of your partner, because it's a 2 versus 2 game. And what is very interesting in this game is it's not the process of touching the other, it's touching someone you don't know, an unknown person, because it's quite easy to touch a friend. But touching someone you never touched before is very, it could be very disturbing. And I hope it was very interesting to see players have this strategy of touching the other, but very gently. Right. Let me touch you. Oh, sorry, we didn't get so fast enough. So, well, it was very interesting. And the story I wanted to tell you, it's about Super. And the Super is a massive game controller with an arrow and buttons, where you can play it with all your arms on your body, because it's very heavy. And you have a very tiny screen with a lot of games that go very, very fast. And it's too hard for this big controller. So when you play it, you know that it's a joke. And the first exhibition of Super was in a festival called Laval Virtual in the city of Laval in France, which is a virtual reality festival. And in Super, the first exhibition of this game was a crap, because we finished the controller the day one, and it just broke in 1 hour. Because there was a lot of children who played it, and it didn't go well. So we were in an exhibition with an alternative controller who can't be exhibited. So what could we do? I just recreated the Ducati in 1 hour, and I had my Makey, so we recreated the Ducati alternative controller from scratch with a box. And everyone was, "Oh, it's so great, this game. How many time did you spend on it?"
1 hour.
2 hours? A full 2 hours.
Yeah. That is a
So
backstory.
super is what the viewers are seeing on screen right now. And what's interesting with that, we are mixing a bit all the early games here, but that's okay. Is the difference, the contrast between the size of the controller and the size of the feedback device, the feedback interface. So it's usually played on the tiny screens with big pixels, and for that you have a giant controller. And it broke apparently, but children or like children breaking alt-control since ever.
Yeah.
Um,
A very
and
common problem issue in alternative controller. Yeah.
yeah, the only thing, I don't know how you deal with this now, but even my last installation, Pied Bibi, so we made it so that we knew what would break. And so we made it so that it wouldn't be functional. So we made sure that the first things to break would be not non-functional, just aesthetic. And it worked. So they just tear off the all the skinning basically of the installation. And but I still don't have a solution to make it children proof. Like there is no solution, I guess. Not having children.
Yeah, I have
Quite
other
radical.
stories on it. Also, when we talk about recreation, I have something to say about it.
We are coming there. We are
Yeah,
coming
yeah,
there.
I know.
There's something interesting with the kitty or the kitty, is that basically you kept the same concept to make another game of yours later in life that is more emotional, I'd say, more personal, or maybe even autobiographical. I'm talking about Lost in a Forest. And that's interesting. I mean, not that many developers of Alt Control use the same controller for a different installation. Some do, but it's not quite common. So how do you think about this process?
Oh, I'm thinking it's not an innocent question. We could say it. I think the Maki Maki was my brush, like my brush, because it's so easy to create something with it, and it's very great tool. And every time someone want to start with alternative controller, I just advise him or her to buy a Maki Maki. It's a very well start. And for Lost in the Forest, it's based on personal memories of my childhood when I was lost in the forest with my grandbrother, and it was a very there was something very personal in this project. And I used the Maki Maki, but I also used an Arduino device to create my own analogic controllers. I just wanted to create my own controller. It was my project for this, and it's also about touching the other, but more likely like holding the hand. So it's a different gesture and different sensation. So two people walk in a misty forest and just want to find their way, but there is dragons hiding in the mist, and you have to hold the hand to get disappeared the dragons, and you have some game mechanics on holding the hand or not holding the hand, tapping in the hand. It was a one shot. I just exhibited it one time. I lost the controllers.
Oh, right. Which is the point for Lost in a Forest?
I'm not sure. I checked the source code, so I think it's a completely lost game.
Right.
Hopefully it's Lost in a Forest. So
Yeah.
And the loop is looped.
Yes.
What I think is really interesting here is that I love that in your works there is always this funny side and then the more serious side, but it's all two sides of the same coin. I mean, of course, between Duck Kitty and Lost in a Forest, there are common points. If you put it into sentences, the gameplay will kind of look the same, even if there is a bit more diversity in the gameplay of Lost in the Forest.
Mm.
And yet one take is very funny party game for events, alt-ctrl event, like really a bit more a cliche of alt-ctrl, which we all do, like something that is working well with children in an event. And then you have Lost in the Forest, which is much more, which has much more, more profound, if I can put it that way. Hope I'm not, I mean, I'm making justice to, I don't want to say Duck Kitty is not profound, but Lost
No,
in the
it
Forest
is not
has,
profound.
it's more like direct fun, I'd say.
Okay.
Like it's
Yes.
easy fun for Duck Kitty. Like you take the stuff, you have fun, it's a party game, it's arcade-ish. Lost in the Forest, there is an emotional connection to it. As an artist, you expressed through this one, which was part of your PhD, you said.
Yes. When I wrote my PhD, the process was to have a look behind and see what I did before, and finding something coherent between all these games. And there was a lot of things that emerge from this process. And I think all the games I made was about being together, finding someone, be friend. It's very, very basic things, but I think I had some I wanted this so much when I was teenage, to find people who can understand me and can see things like I think I saw things in games. So I was everyone trying to search friends. That's all. It's very, very sad, but it's very simple. No, it's not my question neither, but I think for 10 years that was my process of creation. My main themes, my main subject.
Loneliness drove you to make games that would enable social connection. I mean, it makes sense, and it's a natural thing. I mean, it's okay. You're not. It's not that sad. It's a little sad.
No, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. I'm very happy that games existed in my life, and it brings me a lot. Playing games is interesting, but creating games and meet a lot of very wonderful people with it is probably the most exciting part of my young life for now.
And things can go sadder, because we can talk about Fuir la guerre, for example, to make the mood even better. Let's talk about vibration.
No problem. I love the good vibe.
Indicate lots of love. Let's talk about the bright side of things.
Fuir la guerre is well. To talk about Fuir la guerre, I have to say that every games we made in Alistair was with a lot of people. Super was made with 7 people. Duke Kitty was made with 4 people. I just managed the main concept, but the graphism was made by Melanie Machado. The controllers was made by Henry Moraski. For Super, the game, some gameplay mechanics was made by Pascal Viet. Also the graphism was made by him. The sound was by me, the programming by me. The controllers was made by Jeremy Aaron Reyes and Gaël Olivo. So there was a lot of people who managed it. There was also Sylvain Rodran who worked on the controllers, Noélie Velez who worked a lot with us on games, on controllers, and so on and so on, and other people's later. So, but Fuir la guerre is a different process. We were the place where we exhibited our games was mainly the Paris libraries. who wanted to support game as part of a cultural object, and they meet us in some exhibitions, and we worked a lot with Václav Havel Library, which is in the north of Paris, and Václav Havel invited us to work with an association called La CIMAD, who help migrants in France in their administrative issues. And it's very, very important work and very hard in the process. And they asked us to create a game about migration in France. So we said yes, and but after this we was how will we do a game with this, because it's not so easy. We are in 2030, I think, or 2040, something like this, and each one of the collective created one game to explore the process of this game creation with the subject of migration. It was before Pepper Please. It was very interesting. And I wanted to create a game about traveling the world and having a lot of issues on your path. I was very touched by all the migrants I met in La CIMAD buildings. I heard a lot of stories, and each story is obviously different. Each obstacles are different. It's quite complicated. So my conclusion was I can't told one story of migration. It's impossible. So I tried with video games to create an experience that let you explore an asymmetrical story. So in fact, you play two games in one time, and you when you put a controller to the left, you control each character to the left. So it's very it moves in the same time. But sometimes there is something that moves very different with a little noise, and I use this difference to express a different path of migration. That was the idea. In fact, the first version was not so nice, because you can't with your brain be focused on two things exactly at the same time. You have to choose something. So the first version was about two games played at the same time. And I think it's what is shown in the video now. But the second version of Verlager is about the two story played one by one after
sequentially.
Sequentially, thank you. Yeah, and it was exhibited a lot in some places in Europe.
Yeah, the fact that your brain is not able to focus on the two things at once is saying something about the game itself and its story. I mean, it's also the point in a way. So I assume that from a gameplay and game design perspective, it's not ideal for ergonomy, but from artistic perspective, that's very interesting actually. That there's dissonance sometimes, and you have to deal with it. You still have to play. Life moves on and moves on.
In fact, I just had to tell something also. Before my PhD thesis, I wrote a master thesis, and it was on narrative processes in game designing, and I studied some very interesting processes like pseudo-haptic, which is a way of simulate the haptic, the digital feeling on a surface, but with a motion noise, or an anticipation of the motion while
Okay.
controlling something. It's very interesting. Pseudo-haptic is very, very interesting. It's used a lot where in games like car games, when you with inertial things like this. It's very interesting process. And I wanted to, in my master degree, to question this. And is it possible to use pseudo-haptic effects to create some suggestive content in my games? And Feuerlager is an answer for this question, but some years later.
That's fascinating. So pseudo-haptic, I know it mainly from simulating weight in VR. I guess it's the main common thing to, I mean, I assume most people know this side of pseudo-haptic when they heard about it. So it's that when you're in VR and you can, so of course the controller won't change its weight, obviously, and yet you can give the illusion to the player that what they are carrying in VR in the digital space is heavier or lighter just because of some visual aspect or sound, sometimes vibration maximum, but you don't have anything really haptic happening, and yet you have your brain making a haptic illusion just for the viewers. Maybe it's not that obvious, I guess.
Yeah, it's magic. It's incredible because when you feel it, you like someone who carries something, and his motion is getting its speed is getting reduced, and you don't say the speed is reduced. You just say, oh, he's carrying something heavier. It's not the same sentence. You get more involved in the storytelling with a pseudo-haptic effect. It's very, very fascinating.
Yeah, I never read anything related to narrative design and pseudo-haptic. I read about pseudo-haptic in VR on one side, and then narrative design, obviously, on the other side, but connection between the two. You should keep on working on this master thesis you did 5 years ago, even more.
Yeah, actually, it was the project at first. My PhD was at first to keep going on this project, but I went to the festival of Return of Future. I had some success with Everyday I'm Working. I founded the Alinea Collective, and it was so much interesting to meet people and to do so much fun with this. So I just kept these questions and for later, and maybe I'll go back in it in another life.
Let's talk about it later after the show.
Okay.
Yeah, go on, Alistair. I'm talking so much tonight.
No, it's fine. I mean, but something that I think is particularly kind of interesting is that this is a game that has been created for a museum. It has been designed to tell a story, but it's also been designed for a museum. Is the fact that it's going to be a museum in a museum space, does that kind of affect the way that you explore the narrative? Are there things that you wouldn't do if you were in a museum, or that you're doing because you're in a museum?
Yeah, completely. One question in my thesis was if video game creation is an art, can I exhibit it in a museum? And yes, I did, but it's very common today. But in 2012 in France, it wasn't so common. Yes, I think the feedbacks of users was that they can't play a lot of time on something. Some players, if they are already used to play games, they can spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes, maybe at the top, but not so much. So you have to manage at first that your game can't be so long. And also, what was very interesting for me was to let people who never played games before to play it and to use some artistic magic things to let people think, oh, it's digital art. Okay, I very like it. Oh, it's a game. No, I'm trapped. And I very love to let older people play my games because they just play it. They don't judge it, but they have 1 minute gameplay, I think. So Fear Lager can be played in 1 minute. Yeah, 1 minute, I think. No more.
Right.
The longest game I made was Public Official, which is 5 minutes, and it was
right
3 months for a project. It was too long. I hate spending too much time on a project. It's I really hate to this. I would love to create a game in a very short time.
Right.
The fastest game making ever. The fastest RPG ever.
Yeah.
I think that's something common in altctrl. I know some people are working on the same piece for years, but I'd say the most common thing is to actually move on with your life, and you spend some month and then you start working on something else. Of course, you can keep on exhibiting your piece, and make some changes, but yeah, that's one of the nice thing with it. You don't have to stay stuck on one topic.
Yeah, something I teach a lot to my students, and it's very basic, but it's very important. It's to love what you do, and it's a very simple way to know if it's a good thing. This month I draw Inktober's, and each year I have a new constraint in my creative process. And this year I draw with my tablets, and some days was very bad. Some days I wanted to give up because I didn't like it. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. So at the end, I just asked myself, what do I like in create pictures or create stories? And I really like create 3D things and using Blender. So I came back with it. I mix it with my drawing. So I could come back to my drawing constraint with my tablets, and well, that was my process. And I think for alternative controller, what was very great with all the one we talked before is that I really liked create it. I really like it. The experience with people, the way we can laugh with it. It was a lot about emotion and sharing things together. And while talking about it, just I could cry.
Makes you happy. I can tell. Like,
just changed so much on this process, but yeah, I hope.
Life is short. Like at some point, it's simple, but life is short. If you spend like 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, and that's if you're lucky and in a country where this is how we work. If you spend so much time doing something you're not enjoying, not even a little, feels like wasting your life, I guess. I don't want to go too much into philosophy, but at some point it's important. That's why also sometimes a lot of people in altctrl are doing stuff for free or not for a lot of money, at least not for free, because I'm not working for free, obviously, but stuff that, well, in the end, you spent more time and money than you earned, and yet we are doing it because it gives meaning and stuff like this. We enjoy our time. That's an important part of altctrl, I'd say.
Yeah, and maybe I didn't work in the industry for video games. I worked for other stuffs, but I never went in Dontnod, Ubisoft, or things like this. Except that today I work with them in a different way with my school, but and I'm very proud because some students go in these very great places, but I wasn't very motivated.
Motivated, yeah.
Yeah, in working in industry, I know a little that the process of fabrication takes too long, and I wanted to be free in my experimentations because as we explore earlier, all the games I made was about testing the limits of game definition, and I didn't want to fail in some way, but that was what I thought in my PhD.
Well, that's a common tension. I mean, do you want the satisfaction of having your name in the credits of a big AAA game you spent 3 or 5 years of your life on? Do you want to make your own games? And not everything can be done at once. Some people will experiment both. Some know from the get-go that they want one or the other. Some have to experiment both to know what they want. But I guess that's a common question in design and game design in general, game development, etc.
Yeah. I have some students who want to have their name in the credits.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's a very great project. It's a very good, but it wasn't mine. I wasn't. I know that. I didn't like it. I won't like it.
Yeah, I mean,
go on, Alistair.
Well, no, I just feel like, because I mean, there is a difference, even if it's not about, big AAA games, if you're making a, small indie game or something, or, a game for iPhone or something, it's quite typical that you would spend several months at the minimum working on that. And I think there is a kind of, there's almost like a difference in intent in what we're doing as alternative controller developers, because, what we're doing cannot be commercial, or if it was commercial, the way you would develop that as a commercial product would look very different to developing a game. It wouldn't be, here's a project that I started and then I spent a year on, and then I took it to market. It would be, here was a prototype, and that prototype spawned another prototype, and that spawned a prototype that could go into low-level manufacture, and then that prototype turned into something that we could produce by the thousands or something. That's how it would develop it if you were approaching it commercially. But I think by our nature, we're not looking to do that. If we are looking to do something commercial in that we make money from it, we'll still be looking at it as making money from one-offs. And if you're creating something as a one-off, it has a very different sort of set of criteria it needs to fulfill. And for a lot of our cases, like, it doesn't need to be super polished. It doesn't need to be, filed to a mirror sheen. It's not like a sculpture made of marble. Its special thing is that one weird magic thing that nothing else does. And that is something that in many cases, that is the bit that will form in a day or, maybe a week or something. And then everything else around that is just kind of trying to draw attention to it. I mean, would you agree with that?
I think I had a very romantic aspect of the art process, and when I was student, I thought that I will be free creating arts and doing stuff like this, and everyone will pay to play my games. Something very, very naive. But I tried to create my alternative controllers as an art piece, and to be involved in the art field and in the art market. Alinea Collective got some money. We were how to say this? artistes subventionnés.
Yeah, they were funded
Yeah.
artists.
Yeah, we
So they had
were
funds.
funded artists for 3 or 4 years. So every year we get 1,000 euros just for 1 year.
Okay, Rockefeller.
But we were founded artists who created games. Thanks to Sergi City, and but we also had some projects, very huge projects that has been founded like Recreation or the one we exhibited in the gallery Le Carreau. And it was very interesting, but it wasn't enough. We didn't had any good business model. We know that we won't be able to live with this project. So it was a very great experience for 4-5 years. But at the end, I just asked the same question that when I finished my visual art bachelor: how will I pay my rent, my food? How can I do simple things? So so I became a teacher.
That's
so
really
like
interesting.
I'm very
That's
proud
really
to be a teacher.
interesting. That's a question we don't raise a lot in the alt control world, and not only because we are romantics, but of course there is this part of the work that a lot of people will go towards alt control most and for all, but mainly for reasons that are more like personal development in general. And then it can be for each person, it can be because they want to express something, other people, they want to experiment, but in the end, it's always for personal development, or quite usually it is. The thing is, actually, I would put a little nuance on the commercial side, because we have people in the alt control movement that are trying to go commercial, but in different ways. Of course, there is the serialization, which is the hardest, because it's very far, as you said, from the traditional game development distribution, because you have to find a factory or find a way for yourself to make the process easy enough to produce a lot of them, of your controllers in a fab lab, etc. But some people are trying to. But there is the side of it, which is the artistic one, and it's really not the same kind of way. Like, you can be funded through art residency. This is how I make most of my alt control. This is how I managed to survive, at least before COVID, because COVID killed us, but that's another story. And then be paid for exhibiting, and you don't produce the same kind of games for art. It's a one-off, of course, for art, but in both cases, you have to accept, to grieve the prototypal aspect of things. Like, it has to be finished somehow. And this is something that is hard to sacrifice, I'd say, for most people in alt control, including me.
Completely agree with you. Because Super or Ducati was clearly a scratch, and it broke a lot when we exhibited it. And the question of doing something that don't break while exhibiting it is a very difficult question, and we manage it with a lot of tricks, but every time the thing was, there was a lot of things. For example, in Ducati, it's just about touching the other. So you hold a metal wire, and you could say that it's okay, there is nothing physical that could break because you don't push anything. We could assume that it will break less than a traditional controller, but no, because there is water, there is people, there is moisture, there is
Children.
there is all the stuff that you can't anticipate while you are prototyping, and it just emerge the bad day. And yeah, I know you know what I'm talking about. And everyone who gets involved in the alt controller has to be in conflict with it. But it's very interesting that
Yeah.
in the art field, you can't show something that broke the day one. It's impossible.
Yeah, no, unless you are called Banksy and it's part of the game. But
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, no. And also in art, there is the idea of and also in actually traditional interface design, finished product. Like it's supposed to be finished. So in video game, we have some flexibility thanks to DLC and patches. We have a culture of an always evolving product. A thing that a painter doesn't have. I mean, most painters, once you exhibit your paintings, it's supposed to be finished. You're not supposed to exhibit a painting that's not finished. It's weird. I probably we can find in contemporary art something that is always evolving, blah blah blah, but it's not the common way to exhibit. So there is always this idea of you have to finish it and then you exhibit it and then you capitalize on it. Like, yes. So yeah, maybe the art residency only paid for the materials, but that's okay, because for the next 10 years, you will exhibit this again and again and again, and every time you will be paid for that. So you will capitalize on what you did. And if you want to change and make prototypes and every 3 months come up with a new game, well, you will never be, not even like in your finances, you will never break even. So it's a real problem with alt control, and we are spending much more time than planned on this, but it's really rare that we can have actually this conversation, also because it's the less romantic side of the field, I guess, but that's a fascinating one, I think.
Yeah, I think it has to be discussed. And what you said was exactly what I was wondering while creating Vilela. How could I create a game that can be exhibited a lot of times, and if it broke a little, it's easy to repair. So this was also why it's a game with 2 screens and also a simple joystick. It's not really so alternative controller, but a few, a little to.
I mean, I would disagree. I mean, to me, it is quite strongly alternative controller. You know, particularly the 2-screen interface. The fact all of the things that you have done to set it up so that it works in a gallery space is exactly alternative controller.
Yeah, and one other answer was the recreation project. Transition.
Perfect segue.
And recreation was made with this question in mind. And how could I introduce it? After our project with La CIMAD and the Václav Havel library for Vilela project, we were honored to participate to, how can I say this?
It was the opening.
Yes, it was the opening. It was the opening of the La Canopée Châtelet, which is a place in Paris that was under construction for 20 years, something like this. And one of the opening artists was a linear with an alternative controller. And the library of La Canopée invited us to do this project, and with the help of the Paris mayor, I think, we get funded for our project. And I had this question in mind of something that can be used in a long way, but also that could be like the Maki Maki, that is like a brush that I could use in different sorts of places or projects. This is how I designed the buttons for recreation. The idea of recreation it's very simple. It's one button game for multiplayer, and you have a brain, and which is a box, and you can plug wires in it, and it will connect to an Arduino and a button, and it will have some data in a program with Arduino, and it has been developed by Jonathan Giraud, who joined us 1 year earlier. And I also bring with me the controllers, if you want to see it. And hello.
There it is.
So this is the first version of Brain. So there is, if you can see it, a lot of MIDI plugin things, and each one is for one button. And there is some signals I can have a on-off button, but each button can change its own color with a LED strip in it.
Right.
And when you put it back, you have a lot of wires everywhere. It was like a hell, because we have to, I'm not sure if you see this well, but you have to think that each wire had been, I don't know,
soldered,
with it. And there was a lot of things, and this breadboard is just a crap, because you should never do a definitive project with this.
with a breadboard.
Breadboard is great for prototyping, but not for finished product.
But you are a gangster.
Thank you. And there is also this thing very interesting, and this was used for the first version of the buttons. Each buttons had 4 of them, and once you push the button back, you have this little physics things that is very interesting, because once you put all your height on the button, there is this feeling of something that catch you on the button. It was very interesting, but there is children.
Children ruining alt control since ever.
Yeah, if you look at the video in detail, the one we because we have 2 videos. There is a video of the most recent recreation design, and the one who is the one
Matrix,
you are looking at,
or the pedal.
This is the most recent one, but the first version was, it was like the box. In fact, there was the box, and you put the foot in it, and that's the system. But if you see in the first video in detail, if you pause at sometimes, you will see that the buttons are not very in good health, because children just jump on it a lot, and they broke it in 3 hours. And I knew that.
Wow.
I spent 5 months on it, and the last week was just, I slept 3 hours per night to finish it, and it was a hell project. But the day 1 of exhibition, it was broke in 3 hours. It keeps going. We continue. We keep going. Repair it every time, but it was very tense. At the end of the exhibition, all the buttons were off. We could put it in the trash, because Yeah. So my question of something that can last forever or for a long time.
Is
I could not
children-proof installation.
Yeah, the children-proof wasn't in it. And later, Henri Morawski had a very great idea on it. That it's not the problem is not that the button isn't possible. It's that we designed our buttons the wrong way. We thought that we had to use this thing that I don't remind the word.
Spring.
Spring, thank you. It's a spring in English, thank you. And it wasn't a good idea. And so Henri designed a second version of the button, like this one. And it's very different. You have the button here, and it's like a pedal, in fact. So here there is a metal thing that lets you
a hinge, yeah.
Yeah, it's like
a door.
Yeah, like it's like a door, and there is also there's springs in it, but there is only 2 springs, and it's good enough. And in this, you have the LED strip. And it wasn't enough because in this second version, I remember very well a girl in the video of the promotion who saw the buttons and just jumped very with a lot of pleasure on the button and just broke it in the middle. The button just
of course.
Like it was awful, but it's okay. It's okay. We manage it. And Henri had another great idea. Was he asked me someday, "Hello, Rémy, do you know how the skateboard can manage so many jumps?" It's because the wood is designed like a lot of layers of woods. So once you put your height on a skateboard, it won't break in the middle. It will just bend.
Right.
So in the definitive edition of the button, there is this skateboardy wood thing in the middle. So it never broke.
Wow.
For 3 years, I think.
Oh, well done.
Yeah. So it's very great.
All thanks to plywood. Okay.
Yeah. So Henri is a very great designer for this.
Insane. And now it's never, well, so far it didn't break.
So far as I know, the most problem part was
children. No.
Not children. No. But it's another question. In fact, when you create alternative controllers, you at first you use Makey or Arduino, and it's very it's a good step. Not so easy to have, but when you get in the process of doing something that can last a long time, you think about factory, about things that are very you need engineers. In fact, you need people who it's their work to think about something that is unbreakable, or also with datas, because we use a MIDI wire, and we use some little wires, but there is moisture, water, there is a lot of things that in the process that can break a little the things, or maybe how to manage the data. So it's not so easy. And once you get the more precise in your project, you will need people very with very precise skills.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have these people, or is it like the step you're working on right now?
Yes and no. In fact, the timing of recreation project was at the end of my thesis. So my main idea with the buttons was to reuse it in another project and I already designed the game jockey experience while I was designing the recreation buttons.
If we're about to talk about game jockey, we have to make a little announcement to the chat before that.
Okay.
We did the show and tell. It's for the game. Alistair, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, that's right. Yes. So, yes, because, well, I guess I'll just launch into the explanation. So while we're talking about Game Jockey, we would like to invite the audience to join in with our interactive segment of the show. So at the end of each of our shows, we like to ask our guest to come up with a new concept for a game or a controller.
Oh, no.
What that controller is made of is objects suggested by our lovely audience. Now, this week, our bot isn't working, so we've come up with a replacement, which is Tatiana's magical alternative controller hat. So you can show the inside, show how many wires are in this alternative controller hat. There it is, magical. This magic 0-wire alternative controller hat. So, audience, we're going to need you to name some objects. Name some objects in the chat. Just write them in, and Tatiana will write them down and put them in our hat. And at the end of the show, we will pick out 5 items from Tatiana's hat, and you will need to make a concept. You don't have to actually make the controller, particularly if they suggest something you don't have in the house. You will have to come up with a concept of a controller based around the audience suggestions. Are you up for it?
Yeah, that's it.
Fantastic. So audience, get in chat, type in some objects now. Type in, if you want to see make a game with potatoes, type in potato. If you want to see a game made out of sausage dogs, then type in sausage dogs. The world is your oyster. And we've already had a suggestion for pillowcases, so this is going to get very exciting.
Pillowcases, and while people are giving me some words,
Actually, that's what I ate
someone watching you eat
tonight.
That's a stalker. So we were talking about how you used the controller of recreation in Game Jockey. And so the loop will be looped.
Yes. So after recreation, I had to write my thesis down and passed my Viva. I also did some researches in other fields in digital pictures, and I get specialized in real-time rendering for animations and games. And I wanted so much to try this idea of game jockey. What is it? When I created games for all these years, I was surprised how the simplest ideas made maybe in some minutes can be so much fun than something that has been developed in some months. So I thought about process of creating things very fast, very, very fast. It's like scratching a drawer, but for games. But this is the concept. This is the idea. I don't say that I did it, but I want to be close to this experience where I am in front of an audience. There is nothing, and I just create the game from scratch, and everyone can play the video games. And also, I can modify it with a music or with pictures, something blow in my mind, and I can change all the gameplay mechanics in live. This is the main idea at first, because I think there is something, a connection with people when you are in live, and I wanted to keep it and to put it in my game. If there is people who are a little slow, too much fast, they're a little older, younger, they know how to play games, they don't know how to play games. I can adapt it. That was the idea. I adapt to people. And it's not easy. and the idea of what I experimented in my lab was it's very simple. At first, I wanted to use MIDI controllers. You can see it in video. Yeah,
that's right.
I use MIDI controllers to change some elements in the games. It can be also simply some graphics elements, or to modify some gameplay mechanics in a very simple way, like does the obstacles can attack me, how fast are they? Well, I couldn't change a lot of things, but that was the main idea. And we tried it. It was very interesting because we designed our new buttons, and it was possible to use it in live. So I created a lot of games with this, also with PS Bishop and the Coast Module Collective in Lyon, which is also a French city, very interesting. And we managed to think some games with starship storytelling and the DJing music with electronic things. It was, well, an experience, very interesting experience. And while I was creating these prototypes, a lot of questions come to my mind. How can I use the tools for DJs in my game jockey process? And some of these tools are the samples. And the sampling philosophy is very interesting if it could be used in games. The idea is this. When you play a game, when you play a lot of games, you know the difference between some games, not only because you see the pictures, but also because when you play it, there is a feeling, a very different feeling. Steve Swink told about something like game feel, and you have a game feel when you play it. So, for example, the jump in the first Mario Bros is different from the Mario Bros 2, Mario Bros 3, or Mario 64, etc. And if you have a sampling philosophy, you could say, okay, let's play Mario 1, but this is not the jump of Mario 1, but it's the jump of Mario 2. But you just mix the sampling aspect of game mechanics. But this is very conceptual what I say, because I didn't yet manage to do it because it's a lot of question on data, on legacy also.
And there's, I guess, well, I mean, I guess there is a thing of like, you know, it's not as, it's hard to say what is a unit of game mechanic. You know, in a way, you could take a 2-second sample of a song, and that, you know what that 2 seconds is, and you can imagine pasting that on top of something else, in the middle of something else. Whereas the jump in Mario 2 is it's a complex network of interactions which may not fit nicely into another complex network.
And what's very interesting is that some game creators experiment the mixing aspect of games. I don't remind the game, but there is a game randomly some Space Invader or Mario Bros are mixing together, so you control Mario Bros in a shoot them up game. It's completely what the fuck.
I can picture it.
It's very famous, but every time I can't manage to remind the name of this game. And also there is the speedruns of players. When you go to a pipe in Mario, you get in Super Metroids, for example, and after this you come to Zelda game. And it's very interesting how we can create connection between games, not only because there is iconographic elements, but also because there is connections between a certain aspect of games. And this is how I would like to see the sampling culture in game.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's I guess because, you know, even though like you know, the way that jumping works in one game on a kind of on a genetic level does not match the way that it works in another game. The concept of jumping is still, you know, on a human level still makes sense, you know, and there is some way that you can, I guess, avoid the technical side of it and sort of, you know, yeah, I mean, I guess it's because it's an unanswered question for you. I'm not going to answer it, you know.
Well,
you know, I don't have any idea, but I think I get what you're getting at is that there's a kind of, the concepts can be sampled in a way.
Yeah. In fact, we temporarily, we are in 2019, 2018. So
yeah,
the next project was to create something that could mix games together. I had a lot of ideas on this, but there was a problem, a worldwide problem.
Yes, that's
yes. Fair. So every live performance was very complicated with this,
yes.
And also I had some changes in my job. I get more responsible of the department. So I had to manage a lot of administrative stuffs, which changed all my practice. In fact, today, I think I spend only 10% of my time doing artistic stuffs.
Wow.
Most of it is either Inktober drawings.
Right.
So it's a question for me for the years later. So how can I keep going in my projects and continue? And also something which loops back with what I said with my master thesis is that I worked on pseudo-haptic, but pseudo-haptic is some sort of game feel. And what I love to do with Game Jockey is to links between pseudo-haptics experience in different games and create a new sort of narrative experience or sensitive experience with different sort of games I will mix together.
Yeah,
so
I really like the sound of that, and I think that's a really nice intention. I mean, there's something that I see very strongly in Game Jockey, and connecting it to Recreation is on a kind of, you know, you were talking about it, you know, how even with Recreation, all the effort you put into it, it was very difficult to get it into something that would be, you know, that could be left on its own. And I think I see something interesting in Game Jockey, which is instead of trying to solve the problem of something that can be left on its own, saying, well, okay, let's expect a person's going to be here. How are we going to use that person? You know, and I feel like that's an interesting kind of, in a way, it's a left field solution to the problem.
Completely.
I mean, do you have a kind of philosophy of what the performer is doing? You know, what makes a good game jockey?
Well, in fact, I wrote an article on it, which has been presented for the DIGRA in 2018, I think. And I studied DG practice, VG practice. There is a lot of books and articles on it, and I know a lot of VG and DG artists who told me a lot of things about their practice and sampling cultures and a lot of the stuff that I don't understand very well for now, but I get inspired by all this culture of mixing things and the live experience, which is very interesting because you are connected with peoples, and every experience is different because every people is different. And I can understand how it's great to be in live performance with people, because you know that every time will be different. It's very exciting.
Yes.
I also think about your performances, Alistair, because every
you.
time I saw you in performance, I was just completely excited because we can feel how you are with people, and it's very, very so stimulating.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah,
And
because among the many skills of Rémy, the audience may not know that he also developed shaders. There are some experiments like this. So not only he draws and do 3D, but also he codes shaders.
Yeah, I teach technical arts for video games. So
yeah, you're really humble, but technically you have a great set of skills that you acquire over time, of course. But people can see right now some of your drawings and your shaders, and no, that's impressive. That's quite a polyvalent set of skills for sure.
Thank you. Well, what's very interesting with shaders is every time it's a problem, so you have to solving. I think most of the time I prefer to solve problems rather than create something finished. maybe because it's a problem. So because I never really finished any projects, but solving the problems was very interesting, and creating shaders is like this.
Well, we have many words, so
yes, so I think that means it is time for you to get creative.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Tatiana, what is our first word from the hat for Rémy?
So I'm sorry to ask this, but usually we have 5 words, right?
Usually 5, yes.
Yeah, usually it's the bots doing this. Yeah.
Oh yeah, usually they show up on the screen.
So I never had to count the words, like the bot just drew 5 words and I don't bother with it. So the first one is a banana peel.
A banana peel, okay.
Une peau de banane. I can do the...
Merci beaucoup.
Okay.
It's like Eurovision.
The second one we have a jam jar, un pot de confiture.
Pot de confiture, 12 points.
It's ASMR.
Oh, MP3.
Oh no. Okay.
You're in deep shit because of this one, and this one is mine, the MP3. A hat. A chapeau.
There was a hat in the hat.
A shoebox.
Shoebox, okay.
Une boîte à chaussures. Okay, so to recap, a shoebox, a hat, a MP3, a jam jar, and a banana peel. You have 5 minutes. Go!
Sometimes you have a voice inside you. Why is telling me?
In your bag. You have Maki Maki connected with the jam and the banana peel. And you go through the exhibition and you ask people, hey, would you like to play a game with me? I need 2 players. Okay, let's play the game. Yeah. And I have a big hat, with a LED strip on it to attract people like
moths.
Hey, let's play the game. So there is 3 rods. And okay, player 1 will hold this banana peel. Okay. And player 2 will put his hand on the jam. Oh no, ugly. So 2 players are in a trash situation and they have to manage something that will be visible in a shoebox because there will be a screen in the shoebox which is connected with my wire in my back. And once they will see a candy appear on the screen, you will have to press the banana peel or put the hand in the jam. And the experience is not about being the fastest seeing the candy, but to react to the ugliness of touching the very ugly banana peel that smells a lot, or the jam with that you will have the fingers very tasty, you know.
Yeah.
So all the gameplay mechanics is about fighting your feelings of something ugly.
That's one. There's definitely, I feel a sense of kind of remixing and sampling that's going on in there, you know, a kind of conceptual sampling from some of the things we've talked about today.
Yeah. Well, in fact, yes, it's I shitted a lot because in fact we wanted to create this game in Alinea. We wanted to make a Duckity version, a portable version of Duckity that could be used in festivals. And actually, we designed it. We had plans, and we didn't really did it because we didn't have time or money, or we had other projects very interesting. But one of our projects was to go to a maze festival and go with it and share some beers and, hey, would you like to play a game? 2 controllers. It's okay. You can play an alternative controller right now.
Yeah,
it was the idea.
That's really nice. And I also noticed, I mean, that kind of sense of disgust in what you just came up with is kind of interesting. And I think that's something that, you know, I'm trying to think of examples in other alternative controllers where, you know, the sense of touch as something to elicit disgust, you know, grossness has been used, and I am struggling to think of any. So I think that's quite a fascinating direction.
We have a bunch
explore.
of game around this disgust. There is at least one I can think of. It's Ferdinand la boîte, but yeah, it's not the most common thing ever.
Maybe a knife to meet you a little.
Yeah, it's more about pain, but absolutely. If we go for pain, like Shocker and Pain Station by far, obviously.
Yeah. On PlayStation, you have the ugliness on your hand, the mark of the pain. Oh no!
We've had a suggestion of Punch the Custard in the chat as well.
Oh yeah,
Ash,
of course.
if you ever played that.
Punch the Custard. Absolutely.
Have you ever seen Punch the Custard, Remy?
What is that?
It's a game with non-Newtonian fluid, which is basically maïzena in French. So, but to put it like in a classy way, it's a fluid non-Newtonian or non-Newtonian fluid, and you have this ball of custard, and the harder you punch in it, the harder the surface will be, and the smoother. It's exactly like moving sand. And
yes.
And the if you go slowly in it, it's like a fluid. But if you go hardly in it, it's almost like concrete. And you have to punch it really quickly, but not too harshly, not too hard, because otherwise you just hurt your fist badly on it. And yeah, it's a nice one. It's both pain and a mess.
It
combines the best of Pain Station and the Ferdinand la boîte.
It's a very great idea.
Yeah, a really simple one. I think it's just a makey behind it, at least for the first version. So simple, elegant idea.
Yeah. Very elegant.
We are starting to get close to the end of the show. And Rémy, is there anything you'd like to add before we head off? Also, if the chat has question, it's now, or on Twitter, you can ask Rémy stuff. You have his handle, but for this show, it will be now or never. And Rémy, is there anything you'd like to add, maybe?
Well, yes, I would love to thank everyone I met in my artistic collective life. Nothing could be done alone. Clearly, it's about meeting peoples and traveling, changing my mind. I want to thank everyone I met, because they inspired me, they helped me, they encouraged me. Thanks a lot. Thanks to everyone.
Well, that's real nice of thinking of them. So Alistair, I think we are reaching the end now.
That's right.
Thank you to all the
yes.
viewers, of course.
Thank you for all the time you spent.
Well, thank you, Rémy, of course. And Alistair, do you have announcement to make maybe for what's coming next?
Yes, that's right. So closing announcements, just to let you know that Beyond Screens takes place every Wednesday here on the IndieCade channel. So Beyond Screens features creators of playable theatre, escape rooms, public play, and much, much more. So please do stay tuned. Keep on coming back every Wednesday, 12 noon Pacific, 8 o'clock UK time, 9 o'clock Paris time. So yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah, lots of shows on the Beyond Screens, all amazing things that involve stepping away from a computer screen. We also have more shows coming up tonight. So at 3 o'clock Pacific is Korean Drive Time, where they will be testing out some new games. And from us, that is all. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming along. And also thank you to Olivier, who has been behind the scenes tonight.
Thank you,
the host
Olivier.
whisperer.
Yeah, the host whisperer doing all technical stuff behind the scenes. So thank you very much, Olivier. It's been fantastic.
And thank you, Rémy, of course, for joining us. It's been fantastic to have you here.
Thank you, Tatiana. Thank you, Alistair. Thank you, Olivier. Thank you, IndieCade.
See you later, everyone.
See you later.
Goodbye, everyone. See you
Bye.
all.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.